Some people ruin their own life and still blame you. But this time, karma handled everything for me. Comment below. What city are you watching from, and what's the time there? Let me tell you about the exact moment karma stepped into my life. No warning, no gentle entrance, just steel-toed boots and the kind of precision that only the universe itself could deliver. It was the moment everything I thought I'd left behind, the fear, the second-guessing, the version of myself that used to shrink to make someone else feel big, tried to crash back into my world. And for the first time, instead of running, instead of apologizing for someone else's chaos, I stood still and watched karma do what it does best. But before I dive into that turning point, I want to know something from you. Go ahead and drop a comment right now. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is as you listen. I love seeing how many different corners of the world we all come from. It reminds me that no matter how messy our lives get, none of us are going through it alone. Alright, let's get into it. That day started like any other. Quiet. Normal. Completely unremarkable, at least until it wasn't. I remember waking up with this unfamiliar sense of peace, like the air itself had finally unclenched. I'd been rebuilding my life slowly, piece by piece, ever since leaving my toxic ex. Every step forward felt like reclaiming something he tried to take. Confidence, trust, clarity, self-worth. For the first time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I wasn't waiting for the next argument or accusation. I wasn't bracing myself. I was just living. And then, in the middle of that fragile new calm, I met someone unexpected. Someone who didn't talk over me, didn't diminish me, didn't treat my emotions like inconveniences. Someone who listened, really listened. Daniel had this grounded energy, the kind only an older man carries, the kind shaped by patience, life experience, and a heart that wasn't afraid to be steady. Being around him felt like stepping into a world where everything slowed down enough for me to breathe again. But that's exactly when the past tends to test you, isn't it? When you stop flinching. When you start healing. That's when old demons wake up. My ex, Evan, must have sensed that I'd finally found peace, because out of nowhere, he tried to wedge himself back into my life. First with messages, then with rumors, then with the kind of desperate drama only toxic people manufacture when they realize they no longer have control. But this time was different. This time, instead of me collapsing under the weight of his chaos, karma stepped in. And it didn't whisper. It roared. Not because I fought back. Not because I plotted revenge. But because, for once, I was surrounded by people, Daniel included, who saw through the manipulation instantly. People who weren't fooled. People who didn't let his lies land. That was the day I learned something powerful. Sometimes karma doesn't come with lightning or flames. Sometimes it arrives quietly, firmly, in the form of truth, timing, and people who refuse to let you be dragged back into the darkness you fought so hard to escape. And that moment, that's where this story truly begins. The moment Evan tried to force his way back into my life, everything I'd rebuilt felt like it was trembling. Like the ground under me wasn't as solid as I thought. But what I didn't realize then was that this moment, this collision between my past and my present, was about to reveal something far bigger than a messy confrontation. It was the moment I would finally see the difference between a man who drains you and a man who protects your peace without ever asking for credit. It started on a Thursday afternoon. I remember because Thursdays were usually my calm days, the days I stayed a little later at work just to enjoy the quiet. I was finishing up when Daniel texted me. I'm outside. No rush. Just wanted to see you. Simple. Gentle. So opposite of the chaos I used to tolerate. I stepped outside expecting a peaceful ride home. What I got instead was Evan standing at the corner of the building like a storm cloud pretending it wasn't raining. He saw us together. And just like that, the switch flipped in him, the one I'd seen too many times. The raised voice. The accusations. The wild claims that never made sense but were designed to make me doubt myself. He tried to paint Daniel as some sort of threat, as if my happiness was something dangerous. As if I had no right to move on. Old me would have frozen. Old me would have apologized just to quiet the situation. But this time, I didn't get the chance to. Because Daniel stepped forward. Not aggressively, not possessively, but with this calm, grounded presence that immediately changed the energy around us. He didn't argue with Evan. He didn't threaten him. He simply said, "This conversation ends here. She's not going anywhere with you." And it wasn't what he said. It was how he said it. Steady. Unshaken. Certain. Like a man who wasn't competing, just protecting what was right. Evan didn't know how to handle calmness. Toxic people rarely do. They thrive on reaction, and Daniel gave him none. So Evan turned the chaos on me, accusing me of abandoning him, betraying him, trying to replace him. But here's the truth. You can't replace someone who never showed up for you in the first place. Eventually, security from the building stepped in. They knew Evan from a previous outburst, one I hadn't even known about. They asked him to leave the property immediately. The whole thing happened so fast, so decisively, it felt unreal. Watching him get escorted away wasn't satisfying. It was clarifying. For the first time, I saw the pattern from the outside. I saw how small he had tried to make me. I saw how loud my silence had been for him to chase like this. When it was over, I just stood there, shaking. And Daniel did something no one had ever done for me in moments like that. He didn't lecture me, didn't tell me what I should have done. Didn't ask why I ever dated someone like Evan in the first place. He simply said, "You're safe. I'm here. Take your time." That was the moment I felt something shift inside me. Not because Daniel saved me, but because he showed me what safety truly feels like. And once you feel that, you can never go back. In the days that followed, I kept replaying what happened outside my workplace. Not the confrontation itself. I'd lived through enough of those to last a lifetime, but the way Daniel handled it. The way he didn't raise his voice, didn't posture, didn't try to win. He simply stood there like a quiet wall between me and the chaos I used to call love. But I wasn't naive. I knew Evan wasn't finished. People like him don't stop when they lose control. They escalate. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. It started small. A blocked number calling me late at night. A fake social media account watching all my stories. Then came the messages he sent to mutual friends, twisting the truth, trying to make me look like the villain. None of it surprised me, but all of it exhausted me. It felt like trying to outrun smoke. You can't grab it, can't stop it, but it chokes you all the same. What did surprise me was how differently I reacted this time. Because Daniel didn't just give me comfort. He gave me perspective. He helped me see the situation without the emotional fog I'd been lost in for years. One night, after I got yet another cryptic message from Evan, I broke down. Not from fear, but from sheer frustration. Why won't he just leave me alone? I whispered. Daniel didn't tell me what I wanted to hear. He told me what I needed to hear. "He's not chasing you," he said softly. "He's chasing the part of himself that he lost when you walked away. He's terrified of what he sees in the mirror without you there to blame." That hit me harder than I expected. Because deep down I knew it was true. Toxic people don't fear losing you. They fear losing the control they had over you. For the first time, I understood that Evan's behavior wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of his emptiness. And somehow that realization made everything feel a little lighter. But karma wasn't done. The turning point came a week later at a small gathering Daniel invited me to, a gallery showing hosted by a friend of his. I was nervous about going, still on edge from everything that had happened, but Daniel insisted I didn't have to shrink my life because of someone else's dysfunction. "You deserve spaces that don't hurt you," he said. And I wanted to believe that. The gallery was warm, soft-lit, full of quiet conversations and the smell of fresh paint. For a moment, I felt like I'd stepped into a life I never knew I could have. One where people didn't walk on eggshells, where laughter didn't come with consequences. But just as I started to relax, I saw him. Evan. He stumbled into the gallery like a man on a mission. Eyes wild, voice raised, calling my name like I belonged to him. The room went silent. Daniel stepped closer. Not touching me, not controlling me, just making sure he was between us. The gallery owner approached immediately, jaw tight. Because here's the twist. He already knew about Evan. He'd already seen the messages. He'd already heard the rumors Evan tried to spread. Before I could even breathe, security stepped in. There was no argument. No drama. No scene. Just a simple, firm decision. "Sir, you need to leave. Now." And for the first time, Evan had no one left to perform for. As he was escorted outside, I felt something inside me unlock. Not relief, not vengeance, but clarity. Karma doesn't always strike loud. Sometimes it works through people who simply refuse to let darkness stay in the room. And that quiet, decisive moment was the universe's way of saying, "You're done with this. You don't have to go back." The night of the gallery incident should have left me shaken, but instead it left me strangely still, like the world had paused long enough for me to see everything clearly for the first time. As Evan was escorted out, the noise finally drained out of my life. All the chaos he used to drag behind him like a storm cloud suddenly wasn't my responsibility anymore. For years I'd carried the weight of his moods, his accusations, his sudden outbursts. I learned to anticipate the shift in his voice, the tightening in his jaw, the moments when his insecurity turned into ammunition. But standing there in that gallery, watching security guide him out while everyone else looked on in quiet disbelief, I realized something profound. I wasn't the problem. I had never been the problem. I had simply been the nearest place he could unload his darkness. And now his darkness had nowhere left to go. After Evan was gone, I stepped outside for air. My hands were trembling, not out of fear, but from the release of pressure I had never allowed myself to feel. Daniel followed a few minutes later, giving me exactly the space I needed without disappearing completely. It was the gentlest form of presence I'd ever experienced. "You okay?" he asked, leaning against the brick wall beside me. I nodded even though my throat felt tight. "I think so. It's just surreal." "What part?" he asked. "All of it," I said. How calm it was. How quickly it ended. How everyone just saw him for who he really is. Daniel looked at me with this soft understanding that made my chest ache in a way that wasn't painful, just real. "Truth has a way of revealing itself," he said. "You didn't have to expose him. He exposed himself." That sentence stayed with me. Because for so long, Evan had convinced me that I was dramatic, emotional, oversensitive, ungrateful. And I had believed him piece by piece, until I couldn't recognize myself in the mirror anymore. But now other people saw the truth instantly. They didn't question me. They didn't doubt my experience. They didn't ask for both sides. They just believed what they saw. And in that moment I understood one of the biggest lessons karma ever teaches. You don't have to fight for justice. You just have to step out of the way long enough for truth to catch up. As we drove home, I expected Daniel to talk about what happened, to analyze it, to reassure me. But he didn't. Instead, he held my hand gently, like grounding me was the only thing that mattered. His silence wasn't avoidance, it was comfort. It was safety without strings. When he parked outside my place, he turned to me and said something I'll never forget. "You don't owe your past anything anymore. Not explanations. Not forgiveness. Not space in your mind. You walked away. That's enough." And for the first time I believed it. Later that night, lying in bed, I realized how deeply karma had worked. Not by punishing Evan, but by surrounding me with people who refused to let me return to the version of myself he once controlled. Karma didn't save me. I saved myself. Karma simply cleared the path. And that was the night I finally understood freedom, not as the absence of danger but as the presence of peace. In the days after the gallery incident, life felt strangely quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from emptiness, but the kind that settles after a storm breaks and the sky finally remembers how to be blue again. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up with a knot in my stomach. I didn't scan my phone for angry messages. I didn't brace myself for impact. The silence wasn't scary. It was healing. And in that silence, something unexpected began to grow. Something steady, warm, and undeniably real between Daniel and me. It wasn't the kind of whirlwind romance you see in movies, the kind that burns too bright and dies too fast. It was slower, deeper. Like a tide coming in, one gentle wave at a time. We spent more time together, not because we needed the distraction, but because being around him felt like walking into a room where the lights were already on. Everything about him was grounded. His voice, his presence, his way of seeing me without trying to fix me. He wasn't intimidated by my past. He wasn't threatened by my emotions. He wasn't scared off by the leftovers of someone else's damage. Instead, he held space for everything I had survived. And that, more than anything, changed me. But healing isn't a straight line. And mine was no exception. One evening, while we were cooking together in his kitchen, I froze when my phone buzzed. Just a random notification, nothing to do with Evan, but my body reacted before my mind could catch up. I went silent, stiff, waiting for the worst. Daniel noticed immediately. "What's going on?" he asked gently. I shook my head. "Sorry. It's just a habit." He put down the wooden spoon and turned to me, not crowding me, not pushing, just being there. "Hey," he said softly. "You don't have to apologize for surviving something." And that was when I realized the real wound wasn't Evan. It was what he left behind. The doubt. The reflexive fear. The instinct to shrink. Daniel wasn't fighting my battles for me. He was reminding me I didn't have to fight them alone. Over the next few weeks, the shift inside me grew stronger. I stopped flinching at shadows that weren't there. I stopped expecting my peace to be temporary. I stopped waiting for the universe to take back the good it had given me. Because karma had already done its part. It removed what was hurting me. It revealed what was healthy. And it gave me the clarity to choose better. One night, as we sat on his balcony, the city glowing beneath us, I told Daniel everything I had never said out loud. Not just the pain, but the shame, the confusion, the pieces of myself I thought no one could love. He listened, not with pity, but with understanding that made my chest ache. When I finished, he squeezed my hand and said, "You don't have to be strong all the time. You just have to be honest." And you were. That moment wasn't cinematic. It was better real. And that's when I knew. Karma didn't just remove the wrong person from my life. It made room for the right one. Not perfect. Not flawless. Just right for who I was becoming. And that was the truest form of justice I could have asked for. As the weeks passed, something inside me began to shift. Subtly at first, like the faint click of a lock turning from the inside. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was gradual, gentle, almost unnoticeable unless you were paying attention. But Daniel noticed. He noticed when my shoulders relaxed around him, when laughter came easier, when the tension that used to cling to me like a second skin slowly began to unravel. He never pointed it out. He never said, "See? You're better now." He simply moved with me, giving me space when I needed it, presence when I didn't know how to ask for it. And that's when I realized something essential. Healing doesn't happen because someone rescues you. Healing happens because someone shows you you're allowed to rescue yourself. One evening, we were sitting in his living room, the kind of quiet night that didn't need music or conversations to feel full. I was curled up on his couch, watching the soft glow of a lamp paint the room in warm gold. Daniel was reading beside me, glasses perched low, completely absorbed in his book. I must have been staring because he looked up and gave me that small, gentle smile. The one that always felt like sunlight breaking through fog. "What?" he asked, playful but soft. I shrugged. "Nothing. Just thinking." "About what?" And for once I didn't filter my answer. "About how strange it feels to be calm," I said. "Like my body is still waiting for something to go wrong." Daniel placed a bookmark between the pages and set the book aside. "That's not strange," he said. "That's what surviving feels like. Your brain learned danger before it learned peace." He reached over, rested his hand over mine and added, "Give yourself time to unlearn the fear." Those words stayed with me long after the night ended. Because he was right. I wasn't broken. I wasn't fragile. I wasn't weak. I was unwinding, relearning, rebuilding. But karma, quiet, steady, deliberate karma, wasn't finished yet. A few days later, I found out through a mutual acquaintance that Evan had finally faced the consequences of his own choices. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic. Just the slow unraveling of someone who never learned how to be accountable. His lies had caught up with him. His behavior had burned bridges he didn't realize he needed. People who once listened to him now kept their distance. And for the first time, hearing his name didn't send a jolt of panic through me. I felt nothing. No anger. No fear. No satisfaction. Just closure. Because the real victory wasn't watching him fall. It was realizing I no longer cared whether he stood or stumbled. That was the moment karma completed its circle, not by punishing him but by freeing me. That evening, Daniel and I took a walk along the waterfront. The city lights shimmered across the water, reflecting the kind of stillness I felt in my chest. "You seem lighter," he said, brushing his thumb over my hand. "I am," I whispered. "I think I finally let it go." He smiled, the kind of smile that said he'd been waiting for me to feel that, not for him but for myself. And in that moment, with the cool night breeze brushing against my skin and Daniel's steady presence beside me, I realized karma didn't just close a chapter for me. It handed me the pen and reminded me I was finally free to write the rest. In the weeks that followed, something inside me settled, like my soul finally exhaled after holding its breath for far too long. The chaos that had once dictated my days became a distant echo, fading a little more with every sunrise. For the first time in years, I wasn't living in reaction to someone else's storms. I was living in response to my own peace. And Daniel, he didn't become the center of my life. He became the calm that allowed me to finally become the center of my own. One Saturday morning, we were wandering through a local market, sipping coffee and weaving between flower stalls and handmade crafts. The air smelled like cinnamon and early sunshine. I felt light, effortlessly light, as if I'd stepped into a version of myself I didn't know I was capable of becoming. Then I heard it. A voice behind me. Not Evans, but someone who knew him, someone who, until recently, had believed every lie he ever spun. She used to be one of those people who looked at me with judgment, convinced she knew the whole story. But today her eyes softened. "I'm sorry," she said, clutching a bouquet of wildflowers, "for not seeing things sooner." Her apology wasn't dramatic. It wasn't embellished. It was simple, human, honest. And for reasons I couldn't explain, it hit me harder than any confrontation with Evan ever had. Because a quiet acknowledgement from someone who once enabled his behavior, was a kind of closure I didn't even know I needed. "I didn't see it either," I admitted softly. "Not for a long time." She nodded, offering a small, knowing smile before walking away. And as she disappeared into the crowd, I felt something release inside me, like a final knot untangling. Daniel watched the whole exchange from a few steps away, not intruding, not interrupting. When I turned back to him, he simply asked, "You okay?" I nodded. "Actually, yeah. I think I really am." Later, as we wandered toward the waterfront, I thought about how different things felt now. The girl I used to be, the one who apologized for existing, who made herself small to avoid conflict, who accepted chaos as love, felt like a stranger I could finally say goodbye to. The world around me felt bigger now, softer. And it wasn't because everything had magically fallen into place. It was because I had finally taken myself out of the places where I kept breaking. Daniel and I sat on a bench overlooking the water, the breeze brushing against us like a quiet blessing. "You've changed," he said gently, not as an observation but as an admiration. "Maybe I'm just becoming who I was supposed to be," I replied. He smiled, eyes warm. "No, you were always this person. You were just surviving too loudly to hear yourself." His words sank into me, deeper than he probably realized. Because that was the truth. I hadn't become someone new. I had simply stopped allowing the wrong person to dim my light. As the sun dipped into shades of gold and rose, I rested my head on Daniel's shoulder, not because I needed support, but because it felt right, like peace in human form. And in that quiet sunset moment, I understood something with absolute certainty. Karma didn't just remove the toxic chapter from my life. It returned me to myself. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt whole. If this story hit you, if you've ever survived a toxic chapter and came out stronger, then this is your moment. Drop a "stronger" in the comments if you're done letting the past define you. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that karma always comes through, usually right on time. And follow for more real, raw lessons on self-worth, healing, and leveling up past anyone who ever tried to break you. Your comeback starts right now. Let the world see it.